No, this is a really good document, and I appreciate everybody that worked on this and put this together, because, I mean, I've gotten them before where they were just a couple pages.
Yeah.
And that was it. And they just listed the bridge number. I don't know if we've started this yet, but I'm just, since I've been here, I think we've built 65 bridges. I mean, since 1982. That sound about right? 65
Probably,
bridges. Yeah. And we should be building 3 a year.
Yep.
That would be,
at
65 would be, what, 100, or 42 years.
They'd almost all
If
be
we built
replaced.
60, we should have built 126.
Yeah, they'd almost all be replaced.
Right.
But they're not.
But we did it.
Well, go ahead.
We didn't even do double.
Exactly.
2 bridges a year.
Well, we're already being
Well, go
recorded,
ahead.
so.
We're starting the work session,
Yep.
but should we take a moment for prayer so that we can get through this?
Let's.
All right. I already prayed about this.
Get control,
We don't
Chairperson.
usually
Get
do
control.
that for a work session. Well, we'll go ahead and start the work session.
Commissioners, as you know, we scheduled the CIP discussion, and traditionally this is kind of the kickoff for our budget cycle. This is probably a little earlier than we normally do it, just because we know that this year's going to be a challenge. But I had asked Bill to come up with some data for you all. You have the spreadsheet that shows the CIP, which is the working document that we meet with you at least once a year, oftentimes more than that. This is where we prioritize the projects, identify how they're going to be funded, and then also we have a list of projects that are yet to be funding identified, but we know that they have to come. So that's really what the CIP, the capital improvement plan, that's really what it is. There's additional data that Bill and Soma have worked on that show you via a map where these projects fall, what the costs are, but he also just handed out one that we had been discussing, and that shows you what money has been spent where over the last 10 years. Now, I know that some of the commissioners like to identify roads and versus bridges, but for our standpoint, investment in infrastructure includes both roads and bridges. So the map that you just received and then the subsequent graphs that came with it, that demonstrates what has been spent on infrastructure via public works per township over the last 10 years, correct?
Well, snapshot of including the CIP, so 2020 to 2029.
Okay, yeah. So the last 5 years and 5 years going forward then. So in the next 5 years and the previous 5 years.
Before you start, can I ask you one question? What's
It's
the
never just
assumption?
one.
What's the assumption of the budget for next year that this is based on? That your budget would go up how much?
I assume no net increase in the budget.
No
Assumptions
increase at all.
for the special highway fund.
Oh.
The sales tax, we used the numbers that reflected, I believe, wasn't it 3.5%?
3.5%, okay.
Increase throughout. They've adjusted up and adjusted down over the years, but we use the rate of inflation.
Which rate of inflation? Because there's a couple different ones out there.
13.5% like aggregate.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as we're using an accurate one.
Well,
Not the one they gave for Social Security increase.
we have been
One where you-
historically very, very accurate within approximately $150,000 on the sales tax collections. There were a few years right during COVID that it did increase substantially above that, but it's been pretty accurate.
Well, on the sales tax, I just want to make sure that this board will honor what the voters passed and only use it for projects and nothing else.
We gave our word.
Well, I know as we get into this further, you're going to see there was previous commissioners that gave their word what projects were going to be done in the 06 to 16, and they didn't get done.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they never got done.
I think this board's been trying to stay on track with that.
You want me to start? I can
Please
get this-
do.
Yes, sir.
Get this going. So, commissioners, what I tried to focus on within this plan was what had been discussed here previously and what had been previously put into other documents. We tried to provide data and maps and information, so it's a transparent process. It doesn't appear anybody could look at this and with a little explanation follow the logic that we use to develop this plan and the needs of the county. The proposed plan funds 18 bridge replacement projects, 1 bridge deck replacement project, 6 large culverts, 3 bridge designs for future replacements beyond the 2029 period, 10 road improvement projects, and the Safe Streets for All federal highway study. There are 43 bridges within Leavenworth County with a posted load rating of 15 tons or less. The immediate need that we would see from that would result from the school buses. You can leave a bridge open well below a 15-ton limit, but what you end up with after you've reached a certain point of degradation is school transportation issues. The plan focused on the replacement of bridges, as well as the completion of the projects that were in the previous CIP for road projects, and then the completion of a portion of, or what I could gather as the intent of the 2006 sales tax initiative for the projects that weren't completed. When you look at the heat density maps for the accidents, you will see that a lot of those heat density maps where the most injury accidents and fatality accidents have occurred in the county are coinciding with the locations of the projects that weren't completed from that 2006 sales tax measure. So that's part of the data that was provided from the Safe Streets for All study, the heat map. To go back to the spreadsheet for just a moment, just to make sure everybody's on the same page as to how to interpret it. The top column of each year that we tried to list out the construction. As you can see, we have really depleted at the end of this year the 220 fund. That is what we historically replace bridges under. We will have to see how some of the bids come back moving forward. This is current as of today, so it includes the bids that we just opened over the past 60 days. So the last of these bridges to be bid would be ST26, just so you guys have an idea of where we're sitting. We would probably bid that project near the end of this year for winter construction into next year, in order to ensure that if we have any issues or that project comes back over the $1.1 million, that we will have rolled in that $1.776 million for the approved transfer for this year. The plan was developed with no increase, to address Commissioner Stevens' point, in the 220 fund year-over-year rollover amount. I know we have a lot of funding issues with inflation. I did not want to assume that there would be an increase in funding in that line item, and so whether or not that is available in the future is a board decision, and I didn't want to make that assumption here today. We did receive increases of 13 to 15 to 18% in different categories of oil, asphalt, and aggregates, and we did not increase our budget last year by the amounts of the inflationary increases that we were seeing. So consequently, we did increase the amount of the budget, which gets stated a lot, but we did not increase the budget in the amount that inflation occurred. And I'm not looking at inflation as in the inflationary numbers the federal government puts out. I'm looking at what our oil bid prices came back out year over year, what our aggregate prices have come back
Actual
at.
cost.
Actual costs are 13 to 18% higher. And we have made some adjustments, and we've switched different types of aggregate, but from haydite to trap rock, and it was reflected a little bit in our budget. We had a $440,000 rollover the previous year. I think we were under or right at $100,000. I can't remember the exact
Pretty
amount.
close there on that one.
It was coming in on absolute.
One snowstorm would have put you out of business.
Yep. And then to go back to the discussion of what that snowstorm cost, we did run a calculation on hours. But more importantly, where you really saw it was we put down a lot of screened aggregate from commercial quarries after that, where you had muddy road situations where we had a lot of phone calls. But we spent $315,000 on gravel in a 7-week period. And that really is a huge budgetary impact just to recover from that. And then now we have switched back to using some more of the gravel from the Tonganoxie quarry that is cheaper. But those storms do have a dramatic impact on the budget. But where we did see that $440,000 carryover was in the difference of haydite versus trap rock, because in the past we hauled our own haydite and we would have hauled that down to the Tonganoxie Quarry and we would have spent more money on that. We didn't control the timing of the deliveries. The deliveries of that trap rock are going fine, but we did not receive as much in 2023 as we will receive in 2024. So that's a secondary budget hit that we'll see. So our gravel budget for this year is extremely low. So I didn't want to reflect a large increase because we may have to ask for a increase, because every time we don't keep up with the rate of inflation, we are decreasing services throughout the county. And so while we may have seen a $250,000 increase, we are still, in that line item, we are still decreasing services for the number of miles of roads because the fixed cost is the same. So if we only increased it by 7%, but the actual cost increased by 14%, we have that gap that we've decreased the level of service that we are providing the citizens. So,
Bill, can you say that one more time? By not keeping up with the cost of inflation, we are decreasing, we have to decrease services.
yes, so anytime that we see a line item, whether it's equipment
Makes sense,
or
logically.
it's aggregates or it's oils or it's asphalt, if we do not increase the budget at the rate of inflation, and I'm not talking the federal government rate of inflation, I'm talking bid out actual rates of inflation that we're seeing at the county level for things that we are getting pricing on, then we are reducing services to the public by that amount. So if we increase the budget by 7% in that line item and we saw a 14% increase, we have reduced the budget. And that becomes a real concern where if in the future there is a cap on real estate taxes at 4%, and we see a 33% year-over-year equipment increase like we have over the 2021 to 2023, and we see 13% increases in aggregates, that 8% to 24% gap in the inflationary rates is a decrease. It's a decrease in services every single time. So where we might have bought, say, 100,000 tons of gravel, now we're only buying 92,000 tons of gravel.
Exactly. Thank you.
Even though we had an increase in the budget of that line item,
Right,
let's say
right.
7%.
So I think I agree with you on that 100%, except for the fact that there are sometimes the ability to find efficiencies, and that can change those numbers. That's one thing. And as far as the
What efficiencies
Yeah, I don't
would you
necessarily
what
agree.
efficiencies would you recommend?
well, I'm just saying that his formula is correct unless you're able to find efficiencies, and that's
No, I'm just saying for example.
But I'm just
looking
saying
for examples.
that in doing budgets, that's what our job is, to find
You're
and
talking
identify.
you're talking about all the efficiencies or deficiencies that we have found over the last 30 years that I know of.
Well, that's what
Every year.
that's what I'm saying is you're
Once you
correct
find
in
all
your
those,
formula,
there's only so
but if we
many.
can find ways to do things better at a lower price, then we kind of compensate for
Mike,
that.
I have to tell you.
I'd like
I
to
have
say
to tell you.
I'm just seriously, I'm
I have
just
to tell you.
asking for examples.
I have to
Just
tell
need
you.
to-
I've looked at these budgets, and I've looked at budgets for years. This is a tight budget. I mean, sure, there may be something come down the line that we can use. It's not with us now. But Public Works budget is a lot of the other ones are pretty tight. Efficiency is not the word I would have used. Maybe something that's coming out of the blue, a grant that can help that department. But efficiency, they're really tight on this stuff.
But
Mike.
moreover than this budget, what
Right.
I'm talking about is exactly what you just said, Mike. Absolutely, it makes perfect sense. I agree with you 100%. But what you're not taking into account is we have done exactly that for 30 years that I know of. Probably before that, but I can only speak for the last 30 years. We have cut employees, we have cut salaries, we have done a combination of departments, we've got rid of department heads, we've
The
changed.
first maintenance on the courthouse that's falling in.
Not put
Here
as
we
many
go.
bridges
There's
in
some
as we should have.
efficiencies.
So I agree with what you're saying 100%. But you've got to take into account,
Excuse me.
we're not just looking at the efficiencies for this year, this budget.
Oh, I completely agree.
We've done that every year for 30 years, and everybody keeps saying, you got to cut more. We need to cut more.
And I completely agree with that. But remember, in our last year's budget, when we were doing our budget, we reduced the public Works budget increase by $1.2 million, and we had other departments of the county we didn't make
But
any
what
adjustments
efficiencies in
on.
that did we reduce?
The efficiencies would be to go and look at the entire budget of the county and find out where we're not making adjustments and maybe get some more of that money over into Public Works.
Yeah,
But
most
was it
of
efficient? Was it efficient to cut their budget?
In here
Yeah.
early.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll start with Public Works,
Yeah.
then we need to go to the employee benefit and the employees, and then we need to go to buildings and grounds.
But I'm just asking, was it efficient last year to cut the budget for the
Shouldn't have done it. We should have been putting bridges in.
Well,
Or we should have been
Well,
fixing
I
the
mean,
courthouse.
we increased the budget overall. It was like, what was it, 1.4 up?
Something, and I don't know the specific amount here. I didn't bring that. I'm not.
We,
I'm
we
prepared
should
for a capital.
instead of cutting the budget, we should have put another new bridge in, or we should
Well,
have fixed the courthouse.
There's so many demands. I mean,
Yep,
everybody.
That's
has-
right.
You know,
There's always something. You're right.
We're going to have bridges that are going to be falling apart like the courthouse.
Yep.
I'm
That's
just-
exactly where we're headed.
Go ahead.
I think
Sorry.
from an aggregate and asphalt and commodities perspective, I think the Public Works Department tries to operate in the most efficient manner possible,
Right.
in order to serve the public in the best manner that we can. We are the only public service that is used by nearly every single resident every single day. That's
Right.
paid for by the taxpayers. So it is the only public service. That's why you guys receive a lot of phone calls, maybe in some cases, about roads and any issues that do come up with the 800 miles of roadways that we do have, is because it's the only public service used every single day by the public. But to the further discussion on the CIP specifically, we do have, if you looked at the 2022 and the 2023 CIPs, we have increased the number of projects significantly over the course of the past 18 months from getting grants. And so we have received over $5 million in grants for projects that were previously listed as county funded in the CIP, and those $5 million have been reallocated towards other projects, specifically some of the 2006 sales tax projects that weren't completed. So Fairmount Road, for instance, would not have been listed as a $6 million road improvement projects to increase some shoulder widths, or possibly do some resurfacing work without the benefit of some of those large grants that we did receive from congressionally directed spending, the Kansas Cost Share Program, and the $2 million that we received on the bridges down on Golden Road. So we have received those fundings. We're going to continue to apply for grants. I would expect that there is a good possibility that we'll receive grant funding for some of these projects within this current CIP over the course of the next few years. Fairmount Road, for instance, a portion of it is in the city of Basehor, so we would probably want to get an MOU in place prior to any applications, but the first mile between K7 and 147th Street is eligible for high-risk rural roads funding, and some of these other curve sections with some additional work may be on Tonganoxie Road may be eligible for funding. We'll continue to apply for bridge grant funding. We have already submitted an application through Jake LaTurner's office for congressionally directed spending on County Route 30 from Dempsey to 4H Road in the amount of $4 million. So as we move forward, we are going to continue to try to make this more efficient by supplementing our funds with other funds in the past. As you guys saw earlier this year, we have received $28 million countywide in grants in the last 4 years, and those funds are being able to be redistributed through the Public Works Office.
So, Bill, I have a question for you. The money that's coming from the congressionally allocated money for County Road 30, we also are getting some KDOT funding.
$1 million from
Yeah.
KDOT.
How is that? Do we have any? How's that all going to fit together as far as when we're going to get the funding, or do we know? Or
KDOT gave us an extension. We had until the end of March. We had until the end of February to bid the project out to public advertisement. We had until the end of March to have the project under contract. We actually did finally last week, at the end of the week, receive from their legal department a new agreement, so it will be before you next week. They gave us an extension for that $1 million Kansas Cost Share grant to the end of the year. based upon the fact that the federal government spent an extra 6 months approving that budget. And so right now, it is my understanding that the federal government and the Senate passed the minibus package of the federal budget, and the president signed that. So now we will be reaching out to our local Federal Highway Administration officer in Topeka, and we will be trying to figure out the process, because those funds don't just come straight to you from the federal government. They funnel through the Federal Highway, and there's some sort of agreement that you have to engage in with the Federal Highway Department for reimbursement. So I assume that'll be an 8-week process. We will need to bid that project at less than ideal time that will extend the duration of the project longer than it would have been if we had bid that in, say, December, like we had wanted to do, or even in January, because we will be bidding it kind of in a mid-cycle period, because we have to spend that $3 million, both the states and the federal government's money, up front and before our deadlines. So
That'd be October.
We'll probably be, I'm hoping that we'll bid this project in June and maybe start the project in October there's some large box culverts and a lot of dirt work that needs done. But we will be working on this project through a winter period, which is honestly less than
They'll probably shut down now, won't they? On December 20th or something?
Some years, it really, there was a possibility of a shutdown. There's a lot of rock, as you know, out
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say,
the
you
rock
said
can
we
be
can move a lot of dirt.
dealt
I
with.
think you're going to be moving a lot of rock.
Yeah, rocky dirt. So
It's all
Are
rock.
they going to blast it, or?
not according to the borings, but
Yeah, well,
yeah. So there's a bunch of rock, and so we might be doing dirt work, and that'll be a large amount of the cost. So
so you do anticipate putting it out?
we're going to need to put it out to get that funding, because I don't know that they gave an extension to the federal government's window to spend the money, even though they passed it 5 months, 6 months after they initially normally would.
Probably not. That'd take another 6 months.
Yeah. So we're going to need to spend that money quickly.
Probably.
And it may take till October before the Federal Highway Department finally gets us an agreement, even if we hound them. So,
But you can't go ahead and bid it, being we do have,
not until we have the Federal Highway Agreement.
oh boy, here we go again.
So we just have to bid it by the end of the year. My goal is to bid it as soon as possible.
The end of the federal
Calendar-
year or the
calendar.
calendar year?
Calendar.
Calendar year?
Calendar year.
KDOT.
Okay, I was just,
Yeah, we are different.
So the next round, if Laturner's if we're successful, would push us up to 4H Road?
Yes. But in this CIP, we are moving forward with that section of roadway without any federal funding being applied.
Where are we at on our water water agreements? Weren't we going to come up with
Utilities?
a policy on projects that involve rural water districts?
We've looked at these, and Mr. Loffrey has sent those up. Really, we're not supported by state law. The issue would become, and my concern is that without it, at what point do we decide, do we go engage in design? Do we do it prior to design? We do a utility locate as a department and figure out where the utilities are located. But without that engineering design, we can't take a plan forward to a water district. So are we going to enter into design without an agreement in place with the water district is the real question. And then if they don't agree to it, are we going to then pay for the design and put that project on the shelf if they will not bid any relocations over $25,000? It's really hard to get an agreement in place ahead of time without the state. And as you guys know, I spoke at the committee meeting. The committee unanimously supported the changes in the state law regarding bidding of water district work over $25,000, but it was immediately killed by the chairman of the House, so
yeah,
Speaker of the House.
Oh, lobbyist.
house, yeah.
So that
Delightful
bill is
person.
dead. So my only concern is if we put in a policy that says we have to have an agreement in place prior to entering design, we don't have the information to know if it'll be over or under $25,000 necessarily. And the water districts, then the water district boards would dictate the Board of County Commissioners CIP, because we would just have to go on to the next project. Well, if we need a bridge replaced and they want to charge us $35,000 to do the boring underneath the creek and to do the work, and they won't bid the work, we still need to replace that bridge.
Right.
So it's really a state law issue, but I mean, I'd be more than happy to work on any policy.
Well, we've already worked on a policy,
Yeah, we worked
commissioners,
on it
and we
a bunch.
have, and it was ready. We wanted to hold off to see what was going to happen in Topeka because it would have made we wouldn't have needed a policy.
Yeah.
But the challenge that Bill brings up is accurate in that you would have to be willing to stand firm that these projects aren't going to get done. I don't think it's as big of a challenge to get I think the not having the design work, either they're going to agree to bid the work or they're not. So if it doesn't really matter at the end of the day where it comes out. If the water district agrees that any project that's going to be over $25,000, they'll bid it. They will, or they won't. And then the Board of County Commissioners is going to have to decide, are you going to stand firm and not do projects? And
what we need to do.
if that happens. So if a water district says,
Shoot themselves
we're
in the
not
foot.
going to bid it, are you going to stand firm and say, we will not do this project? And I'm telling you right now, that means County Route 30 is one of them.
That's what
gonna
I'm
be-
getting at.
That's going to be the biggest one.
So if you have a $2 million grant from the state and you're able to move forward, are you going to use a policy like that and just drop the whole thing?
Well, you can't get a $2 million or $4 million. Like, I had to have the plans in process for County Route 30 from Dempsey to 4H to be able to submit the congressionally directed spending to. There are some grants that you don't put the plans in place until after you've been awarded, like the off-system bridge programs and some of the KDOT grants. You wait, the high-risk rural roads. You don't design those projects without the grant. But other funding sources, you have to have projects on the table to be able to be dig ready in order to even apply for those funds.
So if we go north, we don't have an agreement. I mean, we're going to have to make another agreement with that water district.
Yes.
And that's very unfortunate.
And the question actually then is, do we even apply for the grant for that project? Without an agreement in place, do you apply for the grant for that project, or do you apply for a grant for some other project where we have an agreement in
The
place?
agreement could be, we bid it, and we only pay what the lowest qualified bid is, and if the district wants to use their guy, which I'm sure most of them will, they need to pay the difference, not the taxpayers.
Well, I tell you what, there's a lot of places, and $2 million, stuff like that, I was glad to see it. There's a lot of places in the county could use it if somebody's going to hold us back. I don't support spending money that before we have an agreement, because why would you want to do that? There's other places in this county that's begging to have some of their areas fixed up.
That's
But
right.
This district will work well with us,
Yes.
and have.
And have. Eisenhower Road project.
That water district has been extremely pleasant to work with. We're doing both of the box culverts, even the 158th Street project went very well. They replaced the service lines to several of the meters, and we bid the larger, more expensive portions of that project. It's just some water districts have not been at all, and they are in that.
And it's cost the taxpayers a lot of extra money.
But to this point, my understanding is we're all set with what we've got planned to do now with that water district.
On Dempsey.
That's
I
my
mean, South
understanding.
Dempsey.
Right.
Right.
Is that?
It is. It's done.
And
Project
that's
is
my
done.
understanding. So we're talking moving forward.
But we're getting ready to see it again in the money that was just approved in the grants. That's the same water
Right.
district over there
What's that?
for the
For the
County Road
north
30.
part.
Yeah.
Oh, if it goes, if Jake LaTurner's office is successful and is willing to continue to help us get that next year mark for $4 million, we'll be back into another agreement with Rural Water District Number 9, who at the last two projects have not been receptive to bidding the work. And if they do bid the work, they want to pay their engineer to design it entirely from scratch.
So, but when you're talking about $4 million is on
Whose pockets are beat?
potentially getting $4 million, I think we have to move ahead and see what happens.
You know what's going to happen.
I think that the people who vote for the people who are
In the
serving on those
positions, yeah.
boards need to think long and hard about who they have representing them on those boards, because they're harming the economy.
Tax dollars.
Right.
By the time they realize that and they come back in front of us again, whoever is here, 4 or 5 years to get it corrected or try to even take a look at it. So I just don't understand this, but then that's just the way it is.
So
I mean,
hopefully they'll be cooperative.
Well, I don't think if a policy is passed where we have to have an agreement in place prior to, I think I would send out a notice to every single water district
Yes.
at the time that you guys pass the policy and just say, are you going to agree to this or not? Because if their response is no, then this whole CIP needs to be reworked and only do work in the water districts that.
I agree. That's what
And
we need
and
to
we
do.
shouldn't be paying to upgrade lines to
agree.
larger size. We should only be paying for what's there.
And when that comes through, we make it very clear, the commissioner's very specific to the folks out there in those areas that if we don't get a response from that water district in the affirmative, you're not going to get
Your
The
road,
this
improvements
road
that you're
project
wanting.
completed.
Right. And that's what we need to make very clear, and we need to stand
I
fast
agree.
on it.
and if
Yeah.
there's a 2-inch line, we don't need to be paying for a 6-inch
Or
line.
4, you're right.
No.
I think it's time to make a stand on this.
I
This
do
is going to be
too.
ridiculous on us. We're just wasting staff time and our time.
And taxpayer money.
And taxpayer dollar, absolutely, Doug.
That money
Because
could
we
be
do
spent
have-
on other roads.
Of the people that would be thankful to have them,
Yep.
and
Yeah, there would be.
And I know the
water boards are
people,
more than happy to help
Work
remove the
with us.
utilities and
Yeah.
work with us to get it done.
and this is a project, the next step is definitely benefiting the northern part of the county because we're trying to cut into where we have a paved road all the way, you go from Easton all the way to Lawrence on a paved road on the west end of the county. This is a real benefit. It would sure be a shame for a water district to cause it to not be able to go through.
I agree. But here's what it is.
Honestly, I think they're going to bill us either way. They're going to bill us for their engineering, and they're going to bill us for their inspection, and they're going to bill us for their time in the office, and they're going to bill us even if we bid that project. Just letting that know. We can come and they can say, we'll bid this, because they at one point said that they were willing to let us bid this, but they wanted to have an open-ended amount for
Yeah.
the design for their consultant engineer, and they wanted to have an open-ended amount for the inspection for their contractor to come out and inspect the work, despite the fact that we had KDOT certified inspectors on the site, and they wanted to have their office manager's time spent for the project so she could do site visits.
Well, it begs the question is why? And the taxpayers need that are in that area need to ask that question. Why? Because that also increases their water bills. I mean, what they're having to pay to have their water is impacted by those ridiculous types of decisions that could be done much more efficiently.
Sounds like a prosecutor out of Atlanta to me.
Well,
And-
when you bid,
got it.
if you bid utility relocation as part of the project, I mean, it doesn't nobody holds anybody up.
Yeah, I know.
Well, especially on County Route 30, there would have been a lot of large cuts, and if you've driven down that road lately, they're digging through a tremendous amount of gravel, and then there are still going to be sections of that roadway that are in huge fill sections that they could have gone closer. And we offered to sign a perpetual easement document perpetuating their senior rights of their original easement that was outside of our right-of-way for them to relocate the line during the project as part of the contract. And so they could have put it inside the right-of-way in an area that wasn't rocky, that was in fill, but they declined to do that.
And the question still begs the answer of why.
And that's why the Eisenhower project worked so well, because it was part of the project, because there was some large cuts in that where the water lines were, and it had to be done during the project.
That was a 10 or 12 inch main.
Huh?
That was a 10 or 12 inch main. That was a
No, on the south side. It's only an 8.
8 inch there.
Should have been a 12. Should have upgraded to a 12. But
The north side had a large.
had a 24-inch, wasn't it, or something like that?
I only
It
saw
was huge. Where the retaining wall was, yeah.
Trying to see if there's another road somebody would want to have.
But
I'm
anyway,
telling you.
that project by
Enough's enough,
as
Vicky.
the road, with the road, it worked out well. everybody was happy at the end of the day. The water district, contractor,
Yeah.
county.
I think
Well-
the Water District on 158th Street was happy. We took care of the portions that were large and
Right.
difficult, and
And it saved them money.
And we would have had to close the road in order to relocate the line prior to the project, and because they did it under the road closed situation of the
Right.
construction, it decreased the amount of work time out there.
Which saved money,
Saves
which
money
saved the
overall.
people who live in that area
What?
money.
This water district we're talking about on Tonganoxie Road, they sent us an agreement and we rejected it. It went back to them and then they accepted it. So I mean, our negotiations on these things need to be. We're not going to accept. They are risking the road. They're going to risk this road project if they don't work for their own citizens.
I hope they understand that the conversation
could
we're having
we-
right now reflects exactly that.
Could we
They are.
come put in our policy like, that we're only going to pay for what size line's there?
Yeah.
Anything.
I mean, that's what we need to do, at least cover it that way, but then they can still charge us whatever.
Yep.
And we're not being unreasonable, but we're asking, you're getting a benefit for your community when you get a road
Right.
project. You should not be milking the taxpayers.
Exactly. Which is what's happening.
So
So,
we'll bring that. I'll bring that policy. I can have it's ready. It's done. Again, we were just holding it to see what happened with Topeka, so I can have it on the agenda next week or whatever, and we can add the language about we won't pay for upsizing, which is typical with
Yeah.
in the cities anywhere. You don't pay for the upsize. You pay for the
Yeah.
the current.
Well, I would anticipate if we notify all the water districts and we provide them a 45-day window or 60-day window so they can have a district meeting to discuss this policy prior to their response to us, I foresee that having a fairly significant impact on some of these projects.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Reorganize the CIP in a
But we need to have it. We need to
But
know.
we need to have that
Can't be
conversation.
held
Yeah.
hostage.
And we need to make it very clear. I mean, I think that we've tried to the other routes, and it has not been successful, so now it's time to,
well, on the first
Move in a
section of
different
County Road
direction.
30, they put us over a barrel because we had
Right.
already agreed to
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
then we had to pay that extra. I don't
and jacked
remember.
up our timeline and
Yeah.
everything. I mean, it's
So-
ridiculous.
So if we put this policy in effect, basically, those water districts are going to have the power to foreclose any expenditures on additional roads in their water district if they don't want to agree to this. If they want to do that to their folks, it's on them.
You'd have no problem with telling your constituents who to talk to.
So we'll put a letter out.
And that's where people need to understand that that's the water board they need to talk to, not the Board of County Commissioners.
Because they won't sign the required, and we're not being unfair, we're being reasonable. Because we're looking out for the taxpayers.
We would only be asking them to bid the work that is impacted by our projects.
That's right.
Right.
Their own projects they can handle.
That's
however.
key. That's the key
Our
right there.
Right,
You're
just
right,
our
Mark.
projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So CIP
I
wise.
guess, I
Yeah,
guess
let's get to the-
the first project that will impact is the second phase of the high-risk rural roads project that's on an extremely tight time frame to get bid in November. We're trying to bid both of those projects together, and it is the same water district that we will be contacting. Are we prepared to?
On which one?
The second.
Second phase of the high
If there's any, I don't know,
Tom-
Second
Tonganoxie
Straight
Road.
Tone, right? That's a different district.
north of Stranger Creek's
Yeah.
district.
Yeah, it's 8.
What
Hey,
It's 8. It's 8.
The one
They're
that
reasonable.
allowed Eisenhower Road to be bid. Isn't
Had
it?
to work with them
Same
on
district.
Bernard Park.
Yeah.
That'll be.
They are
okay.
willing to work with the
Yeah.
county, so that's 8.
I wouldn't worry about that one.
I just think for folks that want to have, we're trying to expend money that helps the northern end of the county. Don't do this to your folks, rural water district.
Yeah. Okay.
Next. Do you have anything else?
There's a lot of information here. If
Yeah,
you guys
there
have
was.
Yeah,
questions.
there is,
great
and I
information.
appreciate that.
Well, good job.
This is
One
the
thing-
best one I've ever seen.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to go over though, since we haven't touched on it yet, what's gravel roads getting paved. So can you show me, I was looking through here, when is the next gravel road that we have scheduled in the CIP to get paved? Is
Maybe
there,
the next one's County Route 30.
yeah, after that one, besides 30?
Yeah, there are none.
So
That's the big
4 years ago, we were doing the PIP project, pave in place, with the people would agree to turn in the roads or turn the,
participatory road program.
that's it. And so if you look at Bill's map here, it shows when we finished that up, all of those that were finished up were in the south end of the county. None were in the north end of the county.
Did you have 100%?
No, I'm talking about the ones that we finished up that weren't in the north end of the county did not have the 100%. That's the problem. So there were none done in the north end. Most of those were because they didn't have 100%.
Oh, okay.
So the problem is that people up in the north have seen the south end get one road after another paved. And so they've been very patient, waiting for their turn. And so you can look at this map or that map, or you can run the numbers. If you look at the numbers where you see the amount spent per township, my two townships are the least spent money on besides Delaware, and that's got a lot to do with size.
Yeah, Delaware's small.
So what I'm asking for is some help here to figure out how can we build at least a couple of the roads in the north end of the county into the CIP. We're always going to have bridges falling apart. We're always going to have the courthouse needing work. But the problem is, for 4 or 5 years now, we've waited to see something in the north end get paved, and it's not even in sight now on the CIP.
Yeah.
So we're going the
We
wrong
talked about
direction.
the next phase being
Yeah.
in the north.
But now the next phase is getting pushed 5 years further down the road. So I'm trying to figure out how
sales
can we.
tax. Say we're figuring you're at doing about 3%. You said,
3.5.
and it's been historically that's been about what it is, except for that bump we got in 20.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I know we got to wait till the money shows up, and you don't know how much money is
Well-
going to show up. But
What did we?
there's always
There
something.
was a
that's money.
resolution. There was a resolution that we could bond up to 40 million. Where are we at? 34, 5. Mark, you remember?
I don't know, remember off the top of my head our total bonding, but there's room for more bonding, but again, not in favor of
No, I
financing our
understand that, but
improvements.
there was a resolution passed during the 20-year sales tax that we could bond up to $40 million.
You know, Doug,
And I know
Well, Jeff,
nobody's in
where
favor
would-
of bonding.
Right, where would you
yeah, but we may have to.
see that would be the greatest need for another road that is within the northern part of the county? What road do you?
Well, there's several roads that aren't dead-end roads. They're through traffic roads or collector
Right.
streets or arterial streets. That would drastically improve the transportation in that area.
And I'm just saying, you need to identify those. and-
We've got about a dozen identified in the north end, but how do we
Well, I
work
mean,
those?
priority-wise, I'm saying you need
1,
to
2, 3.
prioritize those.
Right. So if we got a list of a dozen and the number 1 or 2, how do we work that number 1 or
Well-
2 into the CIP?
You know, maybe I'm a different person on this. I look at it a little different. Sometimes bonding's not a bad thing. I don't know that we can get to where we want to get to with these bridges and this other stuff if we don't at least look if that's available to us.
Yeah, and maybe that's the only way we got to go. That's what I'm asking. Do we have to do a bonding, or can't we just wiggle 1 or 2 roads
I don't know, we
into
gotta
the
do
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking what roads.
I've got a list.
The
We got a
question
list.
is.
We got a list.
And how
And
much it
then-
costs?
We've got a list.
I mean,
Because then
how
we'll
much
have
are
to
we
move,
talking?
but we can move some other road down into another year, like to 2025. I mean, or whatever. We can shift.
But I don't think it'd be a road, though. That's why I was asking Bill. It looks to me like it'd have to be a bridge.
But you can shift roads or bridges. I mean,
But is there any roads
Well,
in there? I don't think
Yeah,
there
there's
is.
Fairmount Road. There's intersection safety improvements. Part of what I built the CIP off of is without bringing individual projects and delaying projects you put in the CIP, those ones from the 2006 sales tax that weren't included or weren't completed where we have a lot of accidents. I included those in the CIP, and so we can apply for grants. I assumed if we did get some grants that I knew Commissioner Culberson would be in favor of what he previously discussed in the dust abatements. Commissioner Stevens has brought up traffic counts. That's why I included the traffic count information. There's been discussions about connecting those roads, but we've never had a vote on designating any specific roadways. And there's just been a lot of maps and a lot of ideas.
Bill, I think what we need to do, though, and I think, Jeff, you have to lead it, just my opinion, is I think Vicki said it, identify the roads, and then let's get back and see that we can build that into it instead of kicking it down the road every year and saying we're going to do something up north.
But
and that's a lot of discussion coming with the population and the cost of it and stuff like that. But if we don't have that discussion and we keep saying, oh, we're going to do it, we'll never get there.
But that's what I'm saying, though. We've identified the roads. I've got the list of roads.
But you
I've
did-
got
what's
it
the
prioritized.
cost? Well,
That's what
I
we
think
need to get to the
commissioners,
next
I think
step.
that, so
That's
again,
what I'm saying,
CIP is what we use, and Commissioner Culberson is exactly correct. You have to put that project up into the CIP
Right, which is why
and not into a queue, which would mean right now you would have to take something out of the CIP, which is what Bill is saying.
Right.
There are projects in here that are road-related projects that you could move out.
And that's
move
what I'm asking
your
for.
project up. I went down to 2026 because anything takes a couple of years to really get a plan designed anyways.
But we need to have safe roads
And if you look at 2026,
maintained.
the first item is $500,000 out of the sales tax. That's a cost share. Then you come down to the next one is $900,000. That's the Fairmount Road one that Bill was just talking about. So those are the first two, really, the two items that you could probably look at subbing in a project in the north end of
Right.
the county for one of those two, and moving them off into the future. Those would be the
And that's
first
what
two.
I'm
I'm
asking.
not saying those
How
are
do
the
we
ones
Just move it
necessarily
that,
into
the
another-
CIP?
I'm just saying those are the first two that show up. Then you could go into 27, 28, or 29 and find.
Right.
Well, Mark, what's the process then? We got
We need the commission to give us direction to reprioritize a project in the north end of the county to be placed into the
Well,
five-year CIP.
we've been talking about this. I think majority of us have said this.
That's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
we're at least.
We keep saying it, but it's not getting done. We keep
So
saying,
I have
hey,
no
we need
problem
to do,
with y'all recommending
Which is why
which
I was
ones.
saying, you need to tell us which one, what is the,
We've
you know.
got the list,
Well, the list, but your priority,
and they're in prioritized order.
okay, then,
Bill needs to take a look at it.
That's
I
what I'm
need to
saying.
take a
I've
look.
had this for years now.
I know
I've got
that.
a
We
list
have had
and
the
numbers.
conversation. That's why-
This one should be done first. This one should be
We
done
need-
second,
bring
based
it-
on traffic counts and
Bring it
what
forward
they
to us.
accomplish with
We've been
economic
talking about
development.
longer, it's gonna
I
take
think that's
you-
why I
That's
said,
what I'm
I
saying.
need to, I'm
And we got a
asking that we
consensus
go
on board. I
ahead
think we had 100%.
and
but we had a
move, you
consensus
can
of the
decide,
board.
move one of those
Well,
two.
I'm looking to see
Down.
what we.
I'm not against this at all. I just I don't want to drop off County Road 30,
Well,
number
I'm not saying
one.
No,
But
I
number
don't want to
two,
drop off anything. I just.
but number two, can I just
So what do we
can I
do
just
next?
finish a second? I think it has to be, and you said this key phrase that you said just now is traffic counts. I don't want to spend multiple millions of dollars on an area where it's not going to benefit at least a good number of people.
Absolutely, but Mike, what you need
I
to
think
take
we-
into consideration when you talk about traffic counts, you can't go 100% by the traffic counter and what it said. Because if you have an 8-mile gravel road and the traffic count's 200 cars a day, as soon as you pave that road, the traffic
right.
count will be 2,000 cars.
DeSoto was a good
So that's
example.
just a tool. to
But
use.
that's the same thing. I've got Loring Road and I got Cantrell Road, and if they have like
Well,
3
you're always
times the
advocating
traffic.
as well for you, and but he needs to advocate for his
No, I'm
portion
not
of the county
disagreeing
as
with that,
well.
Yeah.
because I represent the north too, because in my district goes clear up
Yeah,
to near
Alexandria.
Easton.
Yeah.
So I'm for this, but
So-
let's do the one that
what
the
I'm
best
saying-
project.
I understand. What I'm getting at, though, is for 4 years now, I have identified
Yes,
a dozen
I know you
roads
have.
in the north end, and I've prioritized them. This should be done first. This should be done
let's pick a
second.
couple.
Let's
And
bring
we
it-
all vote on it. We say, yeah, let's get a consensus, and we have a consensus.
let-
Yeah, the
guys,
next
just-
gravel road that gets paved.
Let's just
is
bring
gonna
it
be-
forward. Have Bill, now that we've gave consensus, I guess, have Bill get that and look at that road we can substitute with the other and bring it forward so we can lock it in
Okay.
and not have this discussion next year.
Okay.
Yeah, and based also on cost.
Well, he can look at all that.
Yeah.
He
Well,
can
let's
also-
go back to the bonding. In 15, they bonded $8.5 million before we got here, Mark. Dumbest thing they ever did. We got to pay
Interest on,
$750,000 in $763,000 in interest for
Yep.
us
Yeah,
one
road.
dime of it.
yep.
There's a road.
Yeah, the road.
Yeah, back then it'd been a couple roads. But anyways, then they bonded, December of 16, it bonded 4.1, right?
Sounds right.
We were,
No, that was before.
they did it right before we came, didn't they? They were trying to drunken sailor thing. And then they did 9.7, because the 4.1 was a taxable bond.
Taxable and the
The
9.7 was,
9.7 was not taxable.
that's like 21.
So, yeah, so there's room to bond.
There's room, but it's just
I think we can
And
fit
nobody-
this in without, I mean, if you're going to bond, then we should probably identify a lot of projects and do a bigger
Well,
one.
that's what I was talking
But
about.
if we
Down
do
the
it,
line,
if
though,
we just
you'll have
move
to,
this
those
into the
bridges.
CIP,
without doing a bond.
we could take the number one priority road and see where it would fit within the CIP and what would have to fall out in order to do that.
Right.
That's the
one
way
of
we
my
should start.
recommendations.
And that's how the CIP is
But
designed to work.
I also am not outside the bonding area, because we're going to have to do something, folks, in a couple of years.
That's what I know.
But so you might as well be looking at those numbers now. But I think what we've suggested, what I'm hearing is, we get that to build. You've given a thing. Let them work it and bring that back to us, so we have it on our chart after we've debated it.
Got it.
I'm just saying, though, that the resolution said to bond up to $40 million during that 20-year period.
Well, I don't think we can get those bridges without doing
It's
it, Doug.
never going to get cheaper to build infrastructure.
That's correct.
The longer we wait, the worse.
I know. I agree, and I know Mark doesn't like bonding. I'm doggone.
Well, I don't either.
I don't either. But at the same time, folks, when you look at these numbers, you can't get to where we want to get on some of these streets and bridges unless something comes at.
But we're also
need to
on
do an
track
analysis
of what they
of
said
costs
the
we do.
sales tax
Yeah.
would produce.
Yeah, feasibility study needs to be done.
And then we also got to worry about if something ever gets passed in the legislature that is going to affect our sales tax.
Well, that'll give me a stroke. So
So I'll get with Bill this week, and when do we want to officially try to amend the
Potentially gonna have
CIP?
that grocery store base
Well, it's going to take a little while
What the- I
depending
didn't
upon
hear
the
that.
project to get numbers
Where they're
together.
saying that the
Put it back in
counties
there. I
can't.
think
and cities
2025 was not going
assess
to be
tax.
adjusted. We're already
Oh, yeah,
set
I
for
did hear that.
2025. 2026.
What
we
is
were
going
released
on?
or
I mean,
something.
it's so
Well,
frustrating.
They want to completely upend local
think-
government.
So
I think we've
over the next week or two, then we'll work out
I gotta
which
leave a little
projects,
bit.
identify which ones you want to try to
Yeah,
work
I don't
into.
know. I don't know how exactly we'll have to work on developing a cost estimate for a dust abatement. It was $253,000 a mile on average in 2020. And a lot of those were bid in 2019.
A pavement place
They
type.
extended some of
Yes.
the contracts from 2019 into 2020, but it was $253,000 a mile from 2019. So if it holds true with everything else that we've seen bid, we're probably looking at $350,000,
Yep.
$400,000 a mile.
Yep,
So can we earmark the FEMA funds? Have they been?
FEMA funds are,
they're gone.
Yeah. But
They spent.
so this is my point exactly.
They came in.
When we talked about the FEMA funds, we had a consensus on the board to use that for a gravel road in my district.
and then you
What
approve the
happened?
CIP.
And what?
You approve the CIP, and the CIP is how money gets spent. So you can put the money went into public works for roads, and it was basically just reimbursing them. Let's just be clear. So the money goes there, and then you all set the CIP, which is a budget in effect,
Which
and that's
I
how
get.
money gets spent.
I
And that's
get.
why I said,
Which is
unless
my
it's
whole
in the
point.
CIP,
Circle.
it doesn't get spent, unless it's just a normal road project, like one of their maintenance where they go out and do a chip seal.
Correct.
I was
that's
going
why
to
I'm
just
bringing
move
it.
it. I mean, that's the only thing we can do is
And then
is
talk
to
about it.
take.
Come on.
Yep.
Yep.
That's why I'm bringing this up right now. Is
Well, I was
this
looking what
CIP
the
does
amount
not
Fairmont
work.
needs to move down
So-
in
So-
the next
It
year.
works.
In my
That work for
opinion.
you.
Doesn't work for me.
I agree with what you're saying.
Projects in the CIP.
The CIP does not work for the majority of the board.
I
From what I was told,
It doesn't work for the majority of the board.
we had a consensus that the next
We
gravel
voted
road
for
gets
it.
paved
No, no.
is in my district.
The CIP is
That's
approved
not
by
on
the
here.
Board of County Commissioners.
That's
It's not
right.
approved by the staff.
That's
So
right.
you have to get your project in the CIP and approved.
We're under it.
That's right. And that's what we're
So,
going to do.
so I agree with what you're saying, but I got to see the numbers. I mean,
that's what we've asked for, Mike.
with the miles, it gets very expensive. But stepping back from the fact that you want a project up north, I think typically we should be making our decisions based on Where's the traffic counts? Where's the areas where safety can be improved? Where is the growth coming that has to be dealt with because infrastructure is going to be taxed because of increased housing, those type of decisions.
Which is why it looks like it does.
But Mike, I'll tell you something. Economic growth is one of the key factors is your roads.
Yep.
So if you
can
build those
strangle-
roads up there, I guarantee you're going to see the
That's
traffic count.
exactly
Which is
correct.
County Road 30 is really going to help.
Well, I agree
You know,
with that,
that's-
Mike. I'm just saying that.
But you got to be able to get to County Road 30.
Okay.
Agreed.
Well, okay. Now that you did that, I'm just going to point out one thing,
You've got to
Kickapoo.
point out your roads.
I'm not pointing out my
every
roads.
Year, every meeting that we do.
I'm not pointing out my roads. Just I want you to see, Kickapoo Township has 47% paved. Easton Township is lower. It has 24% paved.
Right.
But that area of the county is not lacking in a lot of paved roads. So we should not have the impression that the northern part of the county doesn't have a lot of paved roads.
Well-
So it's just a factor of, did the dust abatement projects, where were they spent? But as far as paved roads, we have a lot of paved roads up north.
You're not. You got to look at these numbers too, Mike.
I know I am. I'm
No,
with
those
you.
are
I'm not
highways.
against you. I'm not against you.
But what's state
I
highway?
can't include those.
So if you take the state highway out of that,
Yeah, you take
completely
the state,
different numbers.
Exactly.
But Jeff,
You can't.
it's overall.
I get it.
You know.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just trying to make sure that
I'm not against you, but I just need to see
I
the
know.
cost.
But I'm just saying, if you want to use numbers, then use all the numbers and subtract the state highways out of that.
That's
you're
what it's
back
about.
to the lowest.
That's why I said, that's kind of playing.
Get it.
One
Okay.
thing that I will be bringing back up, which will effectively manage whatever CIP. Staff brings this forward every year. Whatever you guys approve is what we're going to work
Right.
on. So I feel that this is the consensus of the board because for the past 4 years you have approved this CIP. So I will do what's in the CIP.
And that's what you should do.
That is your decision. That is your decision. But that said, part of what I base this on two factors: safety and the 2006 sales tax measures
Right.
that weren't completed, and the fact that when we do pave roads, which is a great benefit to the north part of the county, or it's a great benefit to the south part of the county, it's a benefit to all residents. And the PRP program had its flaws in that you could have 30 residents and 2 of them could keep the road from being paved. So we did pave some roads that didn't lead to a lot of homes, but a paved road costs more to maintain than a gravel road.
Right.
So when we go back to 4% increases or reallocating funds or efficiency, despite the fact that it is not as safe, probably, or not as desired by the public, gravel roads are more efficient to a point of travel up to 200 vehicles a day, according to Kansas State studies, than a paved road is. So there is going to be a reflection at some point in the type of maintenance that we're doing, chip and seal, but eventually when you get past when you can just chip and seal 4 inches of asphalt, you have a cement treated base that's only 4 inches of asphalt on it. These roads will have to be repaved and maintained. And what this CIP does not reflect in any way, that we are seeing a little bit of on Fairmount Road, and we are seeing a little bit more on Tonganoxie Road and 206th Street, some of these paved roads that have been in place for a really long time, is there is not any money in the CIP for pavement overlays. It's mill and overlays. And so in the next 9 years, we will spend a lot of money on patching roads up that are raveling or washboarding the pavement because there isn't any money in this CIP for bridge approaches being milled down or asphalt overlays with milling. So I just wanted to point that out here today is as we move forward in the future over the next 5 years, we're going to need to insert some funds towards some significant costs and maintenance, and that was part of what Fairmount Road was.
And I understand exactly what you're saying. I just think the point is that, and I think what Jeff is trying to say, and I'm just trying to, I'm kind of in the very populated district, so is
Me too.
that we have taxpayers in the northern part of the county too. And they are saying, and they are having expressed that they do not feel that they're being equally represented when it comes to being put into the CIP, being put as a priority to have at least one of their roads finished. And you're right. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think that is a very legitimate.
Because it's exactly what you're saying. The perception is they don't notice a bridge because they drive over the top of it. They don't see it. But they notice a gravel road getting paved.
Well,
Right.
I'm not arguing against the decision that the Board of County Commissioners here today. I'm just pointing out that that's what we built this on, and we'll adjust it however. I don't have an issue with adjusting
No, I don't think
Yeah,
you
I'm
need
just
to
saying,
adjust this.
population-wise,
I
we
think
have
if
an
you're gonna
equal
do this,
distribution
you
of
just add
the
it.
population that
Leave
each
this
of our
alone.
Maybe that's what we got.
commissioners
We got
represent.
to figure it out.
The population
But-
is basically
But if
equal.
we're going to bond, I
And
think
we're
we
not
need to
getting
look at
equal.
like
A big picture, like
Yeah, big
like
picture.
connectivity on the ones we dropped off, and we should
Yeah,
finish
and
out.
that would probably be a process, like several works. I mean, it would take a while to make that process.
And there's a lot that feeds into it when you're talking about traffic counts. You look at traffic counts, but like I said, once it's paved, that could change the ballgame. Plus, economic development, the more houses that will develop along that newly paved road. If it's in a floodplain, that's out the window because you can't build in a floodplain. So there's a lot you got to take into account when you're figuring out which roads should be paved.
And then when I'm looking in down south at the Panasonic plant coming in, that's our traffic counts are going to go through the roof.
But
So
then that's
Well,
where we need
but I'm
to
not
request.
against-
We've already got
Yeah.
a lot of gravel roads over 200 cars.
Oh, yeah.
We need to
Absolutely.
request, that's where we need to
But,
put more
you know,
requests
just
for
like there's several
assistance in
roads that
other-
the dust abatement dropped off.
Grants and
And
they're just-
yeah, and there's little short pieces. You know,
Several.
someday I'd like to figure out how we could ever connect them to the blacktops. You know, do a connectivity on these roads.
If
And I think you did a cost, what was it, a couple $1 million a few years ago or something to do that.
the
Yeah,
time
we had. I mean, I have Commissioner Culberson's maps. I know which road you had previously stated as your number
Like
one priority.
219th falls a little
Yeah.
short.
178th. I think.
178th, another one.
There's down at the fire station on Loring.
Right, and then
Yeah.
Donahue over there.
Yeah.
I mean, just
through
to
roads, connected.
connected to, well, there's
Fire.
there's
Yeah,
a
very
short
short
distance between blacktops.
yes,
Yeah.
and there's,
And that would help the county as a maintenance thing also.
I believe it's
But I
around
think that would be a
5 miles.
bonding decision we have to really
Well, that's what I'm saying.
work through over a long period. I mean, it'd take a few months to come up with that.
Well, I think what we've
Analysis done on
suggested
that
for
anyway.
Bill to come back to us, look at for that, but I also think that you've got to seriously, if you want to get where you're going to, you're going to have to look at bonding at some point. It's not a popular thing,
Yeah.
unless something comes up, it's just no way you're
But
going to
there was a
fix it.
resolution passed that said we could do up to 40, and I don't know where we're at on that, 34.
I don't either,
So just to so you can see where it's currently reflected in the red on the spreadsheet is our current bond payments. If
right,
I'm not mistaken, the sales tax goes to 2036, and so if we had if you were to bond, say if there's $8 or $10 million left in bonding capacity, I don't know what the number is here today. That number would need to increase because if I'm not mistaken, you have to have
Right.
the bond paid off prior to the end of the sales tax measure. So that number would go down by approximately $1 million, or go up.
right, a million, correct.
Revenue would go down by about $1 million each.
Well, that's why I'm saying you have to do a cost analysis to really
Yep,
see whether or
yep.
not it makes sense or not. That's just,
So if you
Or if this is the right
just
time
throw
or
it out
not.
there that if you bond or if we come back, I'll adjust this however, like I've said. But if we bond, I'll need to throw in 2026, and then our 2027 goes up. That'll take about $1 million.
Bill, I'm not saying the bond's the right, I'm saying it's an option we should use
I'm not.
because I think we can't get to where we want to. In the next couple of years, we just keep going as we plug in. But we need to have a serious conversation about how we're going to get these bridges because we can't do it the way we're going. The numbers don't add up.
And we haven't really touched on bridges that much today, you know.
Because we all know what the problem is.
There's bridge spreadsheets in here, so
Right.
as you can see,
Then I told you, I think, when I started 42 years ago, we built 65 bridges.
one of the goals that I started this CIP with,
We should have built 126 or something.
one of the goals that we started the CIP with, because historically, if you look back since I've been making the CIP since 2020, when we really created this document, is that we did not pay for any bridges up to this point with sales tax dollars. We paid for all road improvement projects that were already part of the initial sales tax measure. But we put in this year's a number of bridges into the sales tax fund as a payment category. But the goal was to come out at the end of 5 years having completed a minimum of 3 bridges a year, and that's how we came up with 18 bridges and tried to figure out a way to fund 18 bridges over the course of a 5-year period. And so we have 18 bridge replacements, if I'm not mistaken, in the notes. I have to count them again. And then we have a bridge deck on Evans Road that was built in 1983 that is not very old, but that bridge is in substantial degradation.
You're not even talking about DeSoto Bridge.
Yeah, and so this
147.
bridge, yeah, and this bridge is in. It has huge potholes in it. It must have bad concrete. To be frank.
With that being said, are we on some of these county routes that run through these cities? Are we going to continue to be responsible for them? Lansing stepped up and took them.
Yeah.
And I guess I should be thanking you for that. But we've got a lot of county routes that run through some cities that the county's still doing the maintenance on.
I believe that's the way we should be doing it. It's a mess when you do it the other way. I really think you should. The cities, we've made that clear to a couple of cities too. We'll probably have a
Lansing
discussion.
stepped up.
Yeah, but
They
I
took
think
11 South, the Soda Road. It
Yep.
took 24,
Yep.
and they took the bridges with them.
Yep.
And just like Vaser today, there are funding opportunities through the Mid-America Regional Council that would score very well if some of the cities would come up with a grant application and then accept the future maintenance of the road because it would be a city street after the construction of the roadway. And
They have to have a match.
I know that the city of Lansing, to the city of Lansing's credit, I know that they have applied for grants. And when you put in your initial application in the city of Tonganoxie as well, when that April 5th deadline comes, before you go on to your technical application, which is way more detailed, if you don't come in aligned and your project is scored really poorly, often they withdraw their applications instead of spending staff time to continue.
Right.
And it's not considered a complete application. Because I know
Right.
that the city of Lansing's applied for a roundabout, and I know that the city of Tonganoxie applied for a completely new roadway, but they would score very well on Evans Road, Washington Street, and there are other projects out there that the Mid-America Regional Council has specifically referenced in and around Tonganoxie that would score well.
But that's
They,
their
they have to
decision
drive
making.
that bus.
Well, Evans Road, County Road 6.
That,
I mean, that one there, you got a school right there.
yeah, and that's what I'm specifically referring to.
Okay.
It would score extremely well, but the city has to drive that bus, and just like on 222nd Street, where there are economic development funds available through the cost share program, they need to understand that when these roads are improved, and they are in the city primarily, that after the curb and gutters and this underground stormwater is installed, those are no longer county maintenance. We're not set up for those. They're inside the city limits, but that is the major disconnect that the city of Baser completely understood and that wasn't even part of the discussion. They understood when this is all built, it is a city street.
Mm-hmm.
But
Where are we at with MOUs or interlocal agreements with these cities?
they're in the legal department.
Okay.
They're outside of Public Works. I would say. They're completely within the legal department of the county.
Well, I think that's where we need to start.
Well, Leavenworth and Lansing are already addressed. It's just Baser and Tonganoxie that we're talking about here. And as you know, Baser has disagreed that they're a city of the second class, despite, I think you just heard the mayor say there are 8,400 people. I think despite that,
He did say that,
I
didn't
think
he?
they disagree that they're a city of the second class. Tonganoxie is a city of the second class, and we just need to work out really with both of those cities. It's the boundary roads. It's not the roads inside the cities. They should be responsible for those roads at this point, in my opinion, and that's what we're trying to tell them. But they don't like to hear that, and I can understand why. So, but we're trying to work out the boundary roads, what the roads that are between the city and the county, where one side of the street's the county, one side the city. That's really all we need to work out on those, I think. And we're working towards that. We'll get that done.
But
Well,
even on
let me put it
Evans
this way.
Road,
We'll get
Pass
the
the
document
Celsius.
prepared that we
That's
think
in the
should be
city.
approved.
Said my passive
Both
aggressive self
sides.
says we just
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, those shouldn't even be.
Bear hat.
We're on the same thing.
but we're still maintaining.
But we should.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what you want to
So how do we
do.
stop?
That's what we're.
Okay, enough.
Well, yeah, it costs us a lot of money. We got to get out of here.
Before you keep spending.
Okay, now that you threw your little temper tantrum, we can go now. No.
Hey, Bill, don't,
about
I
it.
love what you've done, though. Don't get me wrong. I think these
No,
maps
this
and
is-
stuff is fantastic.
Yes, thank
It's-
you so
it's-
much.
It's
This was
easy, even easy
amazing.
reading for a guy like me, so I appreciate what you've done.
This
All right.
report was outstanding. I'm just figuring that, like I said, we just need to figure out, okay, if Jeff
And
is.
we're going to take Jeff out here for spend some more money.
Say, spend some more money.
And I want to brag on you a little bit for this congressional appropriated money.
Yeah, it was good.
That's fantastic. And what was it, 25 million we've gotten over the last months?
Like 28.
28 million.
Yeah.
28 million in grants. Keep writing the grants. If you need to go to more grant school, you're pretty good at it, but if you need more, let us know.
Yeah, you've done a good job with grants, though.
But really, and today, to go with the grant discussion just for a second, where we're at a major disadvantage at the Mid-America Regional Council is a lot of these cities,
They want urban.
Johnson County, they have people specifically assigned. That is their role.
Yep,
within
that's
the
exactly
department
right.
Is you read every single study that's ever been done at the Mid-America Regional Council, and then you reference your applications back to those studies. It is a time-consuming process in comparison to a lot of these other ones.
Grant writers.
Well, I'm willing to volunteer if you would hand me stuff to read. I would absolutely do. I mean, that's what I did for 17 years was write grants.
I wrote
and read
enough
the
of them. I don't
stuff
want to do
and-
anymore.
No, and read the stuff and figure out how to word things in such a way that, you know, it's the BS factor, and that's what they're looking for. Well, I'm sorry, but that's basically what they're looking
So
for.
you're saying you're good
What's
at
that?
that?
Yeah.
Feel her head.
Thank you, guys.